Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mai, good evening. It's 5:30. This is Update for Monday, 13th of November 2023 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes to look at the latest news on the island. Background to that news, we've got sport and business and Sea Watch and travel updates. And the newsmakers in person this evening. The latest on Storm Debi. The death in custody reports out soon. New railings and a raised seawall for Douglas Promenade. Manchester to Ronaldsway Airport in 7 hours. And the Ravens victorious again in front of their biggest crowd.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, the Update News headlines. Faster Mai, Siobhan Fletcher.
Faster Mai. Work to replace 500 metres of railings along Douglas Promenade with a raised seawall will get underway in the new year. The new wall will stretch from just south of the War Memorial to opposite the Empress Hotel on Central Promenade. Wind speeds of up to 80 miles per hour have rocked the island today thanks to Storm Debi. The top speeds were recorded up on the mountain, with an average of around 45 to 55 miles per hour felt everywhere else. Sport and FC Isle of Man's fixture against Charnock Richard tomorrow has been postponed due to a waterlogged pitch. A new date will be announced as soon as possible. Turning to the international news, the Commons speakers asked for the UK government to explain how David Cameron will be held properly accountable after becoming Foreign Secretary. As he's not an MP, the former Prime Minister has been made a Lord in order to take up the role. The Metropolitan Police says it's keeping an open mind into what caused a fire in West London which killed 3 children. They are amongst 5 members of the same family who died after firefighters were called late last night to Hounslow. And Sir Alex Ferguson says the funeral for fellow Manchester United legend Sir Bobby Charlton was very sombre. He was among around 1,000 people paying tribute at a private service following Sir Bobby's death last month, aged 86. They're your headlines. News at 6.
Man Benham. Contact us by phone, video call, email or face-to-face. We're happy to connect with you. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Garamaya, thank you, Siobhan. From the Ronaldsway Met Office, there is a gale warning in operation and then strong winds later. State of sea moderate to rough and then moderate later. Dry this evening. In a fresh to strong westerly, it will lessen through the evening, then a moderate southwesterly, overnight minimum 10 degrees. And for Jamert, sunny intervals, isolated showers on a moderate to fresh southwest wind, daylight maximum 12, down to 8 through the night. Into Jacrane, isolated showers on Wednesday, a strong westerly and top temperature 11. Low water was about 30 seconds ago, so the tide has turned. High tide tonight, 24 minutes after 11. Low water tomorrow, 19 minutes before 6. Sunrise at 17 minutes before 8. And high water tomorrow just before lunchtime, 24 minutes to midday.
Manx Glass and Glazing are proud to be an approved contractor with Construction Isle of Man. Call the team on 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Storm Debi has been doing her worst today across the Isle of Man. Let's check with David Britton live at Ronaldsway Met Office. David, how's she been and what's the future?
Good evening. Well, yes, Storm Debi's definitely been keeping us busy here today. Our 4th named storm of the season. Storm Debi's now currently sat off to the east of Scotland, and that will be continuing to move away and filling it in further into the North Sea. So in generally it's an improving picture for us. For most places, we've seen generally average wind speeds reach around about 45 to 55 miles per hour in most places, and with gusts also up to around about the low to mid 70s miles per hour, and with the highest of that being up on the Mountain Road, mean of around about 60 miles per hour and gusting up to 80 miles per hour. These values were all captured within the amber warning that we were giving as a forecast values Generally, we were giving around about 60 to 70 miles per hour, and with the risk of up to 80. So it's been pretty much spot on with that. But yeah, it's an improving situation now with much better winds for tomorrow, and increasing those winds again for Wednesday, seeing strong to near gale force winds. It's not quite up to the same strength that we've had today, but still certainly one to keep a lookout for. And that is your update from me for now.
The Isle of Man in 30 minutes. Update on Manx Radio with Andy Wint.
Work will start in the new year to replace 500 metres of railings along Douglas Promenade with a raised seawall. The story from Lewis Foster.
The new wall will stretch from just south of the War Memorial to opposite the Empress Hotel on Central Promenade. The Department of Infrastructure says it's being built to provide a defence against waves overtopping onto the road, as well as against a predicted rise in the sea level. To start with, it will be 1.2 metres or 3 foot 11 inches high, but there's scope, it says, to increase the height by another 0.6 metres in the future should it be necessary. It's a height, the DOI insists, will allow people to continue to enjoy the views out to sea from the promenade. Planning permission for this section of the new wall was granted in May 2020. The department says it will be constructed from cast in situ reinforced concrete with decorative surfaces that mirror the features on the existing concrete pillars. The plan is to have a series of artwork panels showcasing the work of local artists. Island Drainage and Groundwork Limited has been appointed to carry out the scheme. It aims to begin removing the existing railings in January 2024. Whilst it hopes to have the wall complete by the following September, it's expected the deadline may be affected by the very weather conditions it's built to counter. The department says work in the vicinity of the War Memorial will be timed to avoid impact on events to mark the memorial's centenary in May. The memorial itself will be protected during the works. Meanwhile, planning approval has also been granted to replace a further section of railings from the sea terminal to the sunken gardens. No timing has been given on that yet, but the department says it will shortly tender the work, with construction to begin at the earliest opportunity.
A report by the UK's prison ombudsman into deaths in custody on the Isle of Man is due to be published imminently. Home Affairs Minister Jane Paul Wilson MHK and the Chief Executive of the department, Dan Davis, gave an update to Timball's Constitutional and Legal Affairs and Justice Committee.
This is exactly why it matters so much to make sure that we are doing everything we can to look after some of the most vulnerable people who are in our prison. And we took that step, even though we don't comment on individual cases for understandable reasons, and sometimes some of them are still due to coronial process. So for that reason, we wouldn't comment either. But we were anxious as a department to understand what else we should and could be doing to try and prevent individuals who are very vulnerable either self-harming or dying by suicide. And that was the reason we approached the prison ombudsman for that review, but we do expect to hear soon, I think.
Within the next 10 days, we'll have the report, and we have written to the coroner explaining that in the United Kingdom, when a similar incident occurs, the process is that the prison and probation ombudsman would go in, carry out their investigation, which would then help inform the coroner's determination. And the coroner here agreed that that would be the process we would follow. And we have had nothing but exceptional cooperation from within the prison and the officers within the prison, many of whom themselves were deeply affected by the incidents that happened in the prison. And so we now await the outcome of that report, which will then be used to inform hopefully the coroner's determinations, which the coroner I think it's set down for the beginning of December and then for April for both of the deaths in custody.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates.
A Garth MHK has been responding to proposals to shake up the House of Keys constituency boundaries. It comes after Ramsey Commissioner Ewan McGuinness labelled the recommendations set out by the Electoral Commission, which could see boundaries shifted, as unfair. Daphne Kane MHK agrees, but thinks increasing the number of constituencies isn't the way to go.
No, I think 24 single-seat constituencies would be a retrograde step. I think of consideration potentially could be increasing the constituencies, so you would have 3-seat or 4-seat constituencies divided out of the 24. That might be a consideration, and that would increase the workload. It becomes increasingly the members who are standing for Keys would be unable to get round every doorstep of every constituent if you make the constituencies bigger. I mean, if you merged 2 of the current constituencies and had 4 24 six-seat constituencies, then there would be a very large number, 15,000 people, for those members to get around. Other people might suggest that that would make it much more focused on the national issues rather than the local issues, which rightly should be the territory of the local authorities. The other feedback I've had, actually, both at the time of the previous election and recently, particularly from the Groudle area, is that they do not mind at all that Groudle and Majestic and King Edward Road around there are part of the Garth constituency, but they'd really prefer to be part of Garth for the local authority elections also, representation and for rates.
When does a flight become a fright? When you spend 7 hours getting from Manchester to the Isle of Man, and that includes a failed attempt to land at Ronaldsway. Olivia Christian was on this morning's EasyJet flight after enjoying a concert across the water, and then what happened wasn't quite as enjoyable.
First I thought we were going sideways, but then obviously the back wheels actually hit the floor, but then he just went straight back up again.
What did the pilot say? Oops.
Just updated us that he wasn't comfortable to land, really. We were going to a holding area above the Irish Sea, and then we circled about 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times actually. We just headed straight back to Manchester.
I presume it was quite quiet on board. Everybody was quite quiet, were they?
Yeah, there was a bit of an uproar when we lifted back up off.
So you headed back to Manchester, you landed, and then what, you just waited?
Landed back in Manchester. We were sort of in the dark really for about 45 minutes, an hour, until about 1:30 where we then departed the plane, got back into like the terminals and stuff. We sat down and then we noticed that it was boarding again. So second time lucky. We had to change pilots. So first they had a pilot that he was familiar with our first pilot, and he said he was really good friends with him, and he said he would have trusted his decision no matter what. We were sat waiting for about 2 hours, was it? They had to swap pilots because the other one was on another flight, so we got our third pilot, and then he was comfortable to
Olivia, you sound very cheerful. What were the passengers like? Were they grumbling?
Everyone was sort of in good spirits, knowing that we were confident in getting back to the island.
No, you're not that keen on flying. This hasn't put you off flying, presumably, has it?
Oh no, I do it again.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Take a look at the sea. No sailing of Manxman today. She's safely in Douglas Harbour, having not ventured out this morning, but is departing this evening at 8:15, heading to Heysham, getting there just before midnight. The overnight departure from Heysham is at 3 a.m, 3/4 of an hour after the scheduled 2:15. Back to Douglas tomorrow morning, shortly before 7 o'clock. And the departure tomorrow morning is at 9:15 rather than 8:45, heading for Heysham.
Follow the Steam Packet on Twitter for the latest sailing information.
FC Isle of Man brought in their biggest crowd of more than 1,000 supporters at the weekend in their game against Pilkington, and the Ravens didn't disappoint the fans, taking in a 1-0 win over their rivals, says boss Paul Jones.
First off, I thought we were very, very, very good. It's one of the best we've played, I think, just in terms of the tactical, plan and carrying it out, and, they're very good. The rotations they have between their 2 forward players and their 3 midfielders are very, very good, and we knew we needed to be really disciplined to cope with that, and at times they got through us, but I thought we were great first half and deservedly went in front, and then second half it takes a lot out of players physically and mentally, especially having played Thursday night as well, and you could see a few legs went in the first kind of 15-20 minutes of the second half, but the finishers who came on, the lads who came on, got us up the pitch again, and I thought we executed the tactical plan again really well, and probably could have scored 2 or 3 more goals towards the end there. So no, you can tell I'm quite happy tonight. We're putting quite a lot of ownership on the player group. It's not up to us stood on the sidelines or coaching to solve every problem. We're putting a lot of responsibility on them to solve their problems, and hopefully that speeds up their learning and development as a group as well. So we got a point on Thursday in a game that a little while ago we would have got nothing from, and tonight we've done really, really well against a really good side, especially on AstroTurf. The way they play, do really, really well. So yeah, it's a really good reaction.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
It's 5:45. Kainos posted a jump in first half profit and revenue today as it held continued strong growth against key business areas, but bookings and healthcare revenues fell in the 6 months to the 30th of September. Pre-tax profit rose 12% to £30.9 million on revenue of £193.2 million, up 7% on the same period a year earlier. Belfast headquartered software company's chief exec Russell Sloan said their digital services division has been fueled by public sector clients continuing to invest strongly in digital transformation projects. And for a full daily market report, go to ramseycrookall.com. The price of Bitcoin soared over the last few weeks to around $35,000. That's some £28,000. And the rally may continue into the next year. Over the summer, Standard Chartered said it expects the price of Bitcoin to go to $120,000, up significantly from $35,000, while Nashville-based global asset management firm AllianceBernstein's managing director, Gautam Chagani, believes Bitcoin could hit $150,000 by 2025. Reto Hofstetter, who's a professor of marketing and institute director of the Faculty of Economics and Management at the University of Lucerne in Switzerland, said the Bitcoin halving event in 2024 could help drive the price up. Well, the decision's yours.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European markets made a positive start to the trading week. The S&P 500 dipped and gold held steady. The numbers from Ramsey Crookall at the close in London. The FTSE 100 is up 0.9% at the close, 7,425. The DAX in Frankfurt up 0.75% at 15,345. A short time ago, New York City, the Dow Jones Industrial up almost 0.1%, 34,314. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index is down 0.1% at 13,784. The S&P 500 flat, 4,413 in the exchange markets. The British pound sterling trading at $1 22.7 cents, €1 14.6, and 22 South African rand 94.9 cents. In commodities, gold's up 0.4% at $1,945 per troy ounce. A barrel of Brent crude up 1.25% at $82.62.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future for a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
This is the most listened to Isle of Man news source, and Manx Radio's Update is the Isle of Man's most downloaded news podcast.
The Manx government's looking for your views on changes it wants to make the way nursing, residential and home care is paid for on the Isle of Man. It's after a Tynwald approved the review in July. Here's Amy Griffiths.
There are two models being looked at by the Department of Health and Social Care. Health Minister Laurie Hooper has been telling me what they are.
The first one is what we call free personal care. That model is based on the model they use in Scotland, whereby if you need care, your need is assessed and then that care is provided for you and paid for by the state. The individual would have to pick up room and board and lodging costs, which would be means tested, but ultimately the care, which is the most significant portion of the cost, would be covered by the state. The other model is called the mixed model, which is the model they use in Jersey. It's a threshold and cap system with some asset protection built in. So people who are on the lowest incomes would receive the most support, people above that would receive means tested support, and above a certain threshold then you wouldn't be eligible for anything. That's the threshold element. The cap element is there would also be a lifetime cap on how much you'd have to pay for your costs. In Jersey that's set at around $60,000 for an individual or $90,000 for a couple, and what that means is when you reach that amount of money that you've spent, the state will then pick up any further care costs that you may have. People often reach that sort of level between 1 and 3 years depending on the level of care that they need, so it can be that you reach that £60,000 quite quickly. The third portion of that system is the asset protection, which essentially says we'd like you to be able to keep some of your own money so you can pass that on to your kids or you can use it for paying your own costs, and there will be a threshold set that says any assets beneath a certain amount you should should be able to keep. In Jersey, they've kind of targeted that at the value of an average house, the idea being to try and help people keep their family home.
Now, a public consultation's been launched looking for your views. There will also be a number of face-to-face drop-in sessions at town halls and libraries across the island, explaining them in more detail. You can find out more about those meetings at manxradio.com.
Manx Radio Sport.
Faster my Rhiann Evans.
Faster my, a very good evening to you. Starting in netball, and the Isle of Man were crowned champions yesterday in the inaugural Island Invitational Netball Games. They beat Jersey in the final match of the competition, which was held at the NSC during the week, and it followed victories over Guernsey, Inismon, Shetland and Orkney. The island's captain Ashley Hall says she's immensely proud.
We've really enjoyed it, but it's nervy, and we've played big games and we've played on this mat with these supporters, and it doesn't get old. We're still as nervous, the adrenaline's still there. We want to do it for our crowd. We've got the best supporters in the world.
In football, FC Isle of Man's match against Charnock Richard has been postponed. The Ravens were due to take on the Chorley side tomorrow. However, due to a waterlogged pitch, the game will be rearranged. FC Isle of Man says the new fixture date will be announced as soon as possible. And tributes have been pouring in following the death of Isle of Man snooker and billiards president Roy Gelling. A minute's silence was held before the latest league matches for Mr. Gelling, who has been described as a true gentleman who was not only a legend in Manx Q sports but in so many facets of Manx life. In a post on the Isle of Man snooker and billiards Facebook page, it says Roy didn't miss a single match for Maloo in 65 years. When he did have to eventually lay down his cue, he followed matches closely, came to watch finals and never missed a prize presentation night. He was also a generous sponsor of the Island Championships for many years and will be sadly missed by all.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Interesting day at Ronaldsway. Inbound, the 5:25 Loganair at Manchester was on time. The 7:30 London Gatwick is showing on time at the moment. And then it's the 10:08 Loganair from London City. Finally, inbound Loganair's returning patient transfer, 7:55 from Liverpool. Outbound, the 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool is going on time, and then it's the 8 o'clock EasyJet return to Gatwick showing on time. On the roads, there's a danger of electrocution. A tree down on Gardeners Lane in Ramsey on the Derby roadside blocking the road. It's brought down an electrical cable. Just watch out there. An emergency tree works, meaning that the road is closed the length of the Laxey to Ramsey Coast Road from the junction with Minorca Crossroads to the junction with Doon Glen and the Ballarat Road. Temporary lights on the main road in Crosby, the Ballavitchel Road there, excavation work. The Arrowsea Road in Glenmay is closed from Glenmay to the Shoulder Road for resurfacing. Old Laxey Hill's closed for excavation work. The Port Sodrick Glen Road's closed for tree trimming. Temporary lights at the bottom end of Colby Glen Road for gully repairs. The Clennet Road in Sulby is closed for resurfacing. In Douglas, Hillside Avenue is closed through to Circular Road for office window replacement. Temporary lights on Glen Crutchery Road at the junction with Victoria Road for resurfacing. A section of Switzerland Road's closed for construction work. Temporary lights are between Johnny Watterson's Lane and the Scollock Road on Ballinard Road for ditch clearing, and temporary lights on Market Street near Chester Street car park for water main work.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre. Spread your payments interest-free. Get more with
Quayside.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300.
Couriers are being warned they face significant time behind bars if they get caught bringing drugs to the Isle of Man. Last Friday, 34-year-old Bournemouth man Ali Asghar Kilic was jailed for 46 months. It's a sentence being welcomed by Detective Inspector Jamie Tomlinson, who's in charge of the Drug and Organised Crime Unit.
It's the largest single seizure of cannabis bush, and that's 21 kilos of the drug. Obviously, it's hugely popular now, certainly on the island, and its street value is significant as well. Well, Mr. Kilic, he's come all the way up from Bournemouth. He's been in a people carrier type vehicle, and it's had a sophisticated vehicle hide. We've seen them before. This was under the front seats, and it was big enough to be able to obviously hide 21 kilos of the drug.
What sort of message do you think, or do you hope that this will send out, maybe to other people
people who are considering doing the same and acting as a courier?
Well, it's yet another significant sentence, isn't it? And it shows how the courts view these offences, and they're obviously going to treat people harshly, quite rightly. Our cannabis sentencing laws have obviously been extended for a reason, because to try and combat these people bringing these drugs to the island in these amounts.
This is one great example of a good seizure. You've taken these drugs off the streets, but the work continues.
The work does continue, and as I say, this wasn't specifically as a result of work from my officers. This was fantastic work by uniform officers as part of Operation Fortress at the sea terminal. They've greeted the boat on this particular occasion. They've identified the vehicle. Their suspicions have been raised, and they've had cause to search the vehicle quite rightly, and they've located the drugs. So it was some great work by them.
That's it for Update Tonight, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thanks to newsreader Siobhan Fletcher, producer Amy Griffiths, and Metman David Britton. Good to hear David from Ronaldsway. That's it. After the news at 6, Phil Goins here with Andrew Langer-Newton from the Green Party. And Update's back tomorrow at 5:30.
WINT